Hello and welcome to the MMO development class. My name is Nelson LeKay, and with me is Mr. Stephen Curtis. How's it going?
It's going great, Nelson. Sounds like we have a great deal to talk about today.
Oh yeah. So what this project is it's an over-the-shoulder look of the development of an MMO. The idea here is that we basically chose a project idea that we wanted to accomplish, and then what we're going to do is we're going to systematically go through all the challenges that project throws our way and overcome them in our R&D, and then we're going to share our progress with all of you guys. Now, the MMO, an MMO is not a arbitrary choice. The reason for that is that an MMO is a very challenging bit of software to write. There are a lot of things that we are going to have to deal with. We have to work, obviously, with networking because it's a multiplayer game. We have to work with asset creation, both the process of asset import and placement into the game, but as well as the design of the assets themselves. We have to go through quite a few different complicated systems like quest systems, inventory, and so on. In addition, we'll have to work with AI. How do we deal with pathfinding? How do we deal with aggro and all that fun stuff? Now, the idea here is that all of these concepts are applicable to a wide variety of programming challenges, both in the game development world and outside of it. And what we get to do is by having a goal be writing an MMO, we can go through all these challenges and share our implementations to those challenges and give people a lot of context and a lot of knowledge for overcoming a variety of different challenges that they may face in their own projects. Really want to stress that a lot of the stuff that we're going to be doing in this project isn't going to necessarily be restricted to just MMOs. There's a lot of interesting stuff that we need to do that's applicable to, like I said, a wide variety of genres and a wide variety of applications.
Well, basically, by choosing an MMO, we pick the most challenging of both game worlds and web development worlds because you need all of those at a very high level for an MMO.
Right. So it just hands us a bunch of great things that we can work on, and it gives us a goal to work towards. So you can kind of see it as an ends to a mean or something like that. It's a silly little sentence that I came up with earlier. I'm
I do
rather proud
like
of it.
that.
Yeah.
It's a good sentence.
So the goal, or at least the ends that we're looking at, is going to be a large open world with both procedural and custom content. Obviously, we don't really have a studio here that can produce a massive amount of content for our game, and that really isn't necessarily something that we actually need in order to accomplish our goal. We just need enough content to explore the systems that we are going to be creating. So we'll definitely be taking advantage of procedurally generated content as well as custom made content. In addition to that, the early version of this game, which some of you guys may have played a couple years ago when this project started, was a kind of arena PvP sort of style game. And we wanted to see how we could integrate something like that into the context of a larger open world. So, kind of the goal of this game, or at least the tentative design that we're looking at, is something along the lines of a large open world, which I want to focus on a seamless open world so there aren't any loading screens or as few as possible, in addition to a sort of arena style game that will allow people to be able to hop into and play, providing a fun experience given our constraints. And our constraints are obviously that since this is not a commercial game, we're not necessarily looking for millions of players, nor do we have the resources to fully flesh out an entire content-based PvE system or game, despite the fact that that's ultimately something that we're going to be building. Again, I
So
want to.
not so not only are we taking on kind of a World of Warcraft style MMO, but we're crazy, so we're going to throw a MOBA type game in there too.
Right, and the goal of that game is we really want that other game. It's the same game. We really want the arena to tie into the procedural world, so we're going to be taking a look at something like having cities being able to be captured. We want dynamic quest generation, so based off the state of a city, whether it be almost captured or whatnot, quests will be generated for people who want to play the PvE side in order to maybe boost the stats of their players in the arena. Now, when we get to balancing and all that stuff, that'll be an entirely different discussion. Currently, we're not too worried about balancing at the moment, but it's going to be something that we will take a little bit of time into doing, since we do ultimately want the thing that we make to be fun. Of course, that's the purpose of all games. However, to make any sort of game, whether it's fun or not, there are a variety of technical challenges, and those technical challenges are going to provide us a great framework for exploring a lot of different programming techniques.
And to a degree, it already has.
Indeed, there is a lot of stuff that's actually already put into the game, or not put into the game, but a lot of research that's been done for this project. So before I get into what's already been done, I do want to quickly point out something that I've alluded towards earlier in this video, and that is this project has actually been going on for a couple years. And this project started with a basic MMO tech demo being created, and a lot of people having fun with it, and then it being turned into a training opportunity, simply because the people who developed that R&D tech demo, had to overcome a variety of challenges that they wanted to be able to share with people, and that's basically how this project started. It's been going on for a while. As a result, we have over 100 hours available right now for the entire system. And so let's go ahead and talk really quickly about what you guys can hop in and learn about already. Um, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Sounds like fun.
I wasn't here for that time, but I have gone back and looked at some stuff like Lee's terrain system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Lee's terrain system is, he really ran it when he was working on creating a very large-scale world. He ran into a lot of problems with the Unity terrain system. So what he did was he created a custom height map-based terrain system that provided everything from LOD to procedural creation of terrain to being able to edit the terrain in real time. It allowed for a massive world due to the procedural nature of it and the way that he loaded it into individual patches. And yeah, so it's actually a pretty cool system, and if you want to learn about height map based terrains, I recommend going and checking that out. There's a lot of great stuff already available in that series. Everything from, algorithms for randomly generating numbers to the concept of what a height map based terrain system is. So if you ever wanted to learn more about terrain, check it out. This stuff, it was purely R&D. It was never actually added into the main project. But the concepts that he went through is definitely going to be a candidate system for how we're going to go ahead and put together our final terrain. I'll talk a little bit more about what we're going to be doing with our terrain in a little bit more detail shortly. I also want to point out that we did put together a database system for storing patch data. We really needed a way to, if you guys are familiar with the creation kit, the Skyrim and Morrowind and Oblivion and Fallout engine, I don't know if that engine has a name, but the editor you use for that engine is called the creation kit. Every master world is contained in this one file that contains a bunch of stuff. So what I wanted to do is, in order to store terrain system and other positional data, such as this object is here as opposed to there, I created a file format for enabling me to do that with a potentially endless terrain, a potentially endless world that allowed us to do that effectively or efficiently. And so that's another candidate system that has been recorded and put up, and you guys can watch that already. We'll be revisiting the stuff that was learned in that and probably creating a derivative of it for our final world data storage. Next up, we have some more software engineering type stuff. We talk about parsing. So yeah, it's kind of funny. There's like this subclass inside of this whole class that's all about parsing, and we show you guys how to handwrite a recursive descent parser, and then using a program like Antler to create a custom language or create a custom parser as well. And that stuff is applicable to a wide variety of things that we'll be running into with this project. We're going to be looking at scripting as well in the future. And so we put that introduction to parsing in there as a kind of general sort of, I guess introduction to parsing. I don't. It's a really aptly named series, isn't it? Um, and no, so definitely it's another example of this is a problem that we'll face when working on this project. Let's go ahead and learn how to do it, put some R&D together, and then teach you guys it. So yeah, if you want to know about parsing, check that out. Even if you don't want to know about parsing, honestly, it's a really fun problem to solve, and you get to learn a lot through that small little series. Then next up, we needed to get some more R&D done for our networking side of things. We needed to get a better idea about how Unity and our server would interact over the network. So what we did was we built a real-time 2D network-based game in Unity and Photon. It has a lobby. I believe we got chat in there as well. And it has a very basic networking framework. And we got to learn a lot about networking and the different challenges that we'll face, how to abstract networking, and all of that fun stuff. So that game is called Runeslinger and is a fairly complete project. It isn't very polished by the end of it, but the goal was never to polish it. And besides, that's the problem of artists, people like Steven over here, not programming people like
I
me.
could see that coming.
So the game, it gave us a lot of great things to talk about in regards to Unity and Photon through networking, and it gave us the chance to work on a basic networking abstraction layer. So more examples of great content that's available right now if you guys want to learn about that. The next thing is another big thing, CGS. So CGS was a thing that I wrote a couple years ago where I was tired of styling GUIs in Unity using their inspector. If you guys are familiar with Unity, in order to style the GUIs, you have to sit there in the inspector window and click on, oh, I want the font size to be that, I want the margin to be that, I want the background to be that. I just got really tired of it. I hate my mouse. Like, I just don't like my mouse at all, and having to deal with the mouse in the inspector to tweak my GUI just wasn't very fun. So what I did was I took the concepts of CSS and I wrote a CSS-based language that allowed me to style um, uh, Unity GUIs. Now, we actually went ahead and implemented this on video for you guys, and it covers a lot of different things, a lot of different algorithms. We use a test-driven approach for development. I wouldn't necessarily call it full-blown TDD, but definitely got a really nice example of developing a library where tests were invaluable in developing it. We got to take a look at parsing, in this example using Antler, and we got to dissect the Unity GUI system a little bit to put together some of the features that I wanted to put into it. I do want to point out right now the future of CGS, and the whole purpose of CGS it was mostly something to do for teaching. It was mostly another example problem that we could work through and build something with. It, as per the fact that it's not even on the asset store, it wasn't necessarily something that was ready for production at the time of its development. It was going to be used for certain things because working with Unity GUI is very annoying. But what I'm seeing right now is that in a month or two, the GUI system that Unity is supposed to be releasing is going to be released. And I know that they told us that 2 years ago, but I think they're telling the truth this time. I think it's really going to happen, especially given the pressure that the Unreal guys and the Crytek guys have put on Unity over the last years. They need to get
Yeah,
that.
I would expect Unity 5 to be coming with a quickness now.
Yeah. So also that GUI system, the new GUI system will be backported into version 4, which is nice. And then, yeah, so that's already been done on video. And then through the last month, we've been releasing content 3 times a week for the last 4 weeks. I think today is going to be the final drop of this, or the 4-week mark of continuous drops. And we've been building an auto updater. And that's because we finally decided, okay, well, we've worked on networking stuff. We've done a lot of R&D with terrain. We've worked on a variety of other subsystems. Let's go ahead and get the base project started, the real actual project that people can play. That isn't necessarily to say that we won't fire up another project in the future and use that to develop some subsystem or at least test some subsystem. But it is to say that we are really writing the actual project that people will be able to play now. And in order to do that, the first thing that I wanted to put together was the auto updater. And that's because I don't know if you guys are familiar with continuous integration or the ability of being able to click a button and have your changes be deployed to all of your customers or clients or even your in-house developers. But it's ridiculously important. Um, we'll be talking a little bit more about how the auto updater has helped me when we go down and start talking about some of the R&D we've done. But I will say this, it is paramount to have this system in place at the beginning of your project to decrease your feedback cycle. A lot of things that we're going to be doing is going to be exploring ways to make our feedback loop tighter and tighter. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean, if you make a change, how quickly can you test that change or evaluate if that change did what you expected it to? And that's going to be a very big thing with the way that we're approaching the system, both with the auto updater and use of testing, as well as some more things that we'll talk about here in this video. So the
Well,
auto
really,
update,
I mean, with a project of this scope, you have to have a fast turnaround. There's just so much involved already.
right. And by automating it and putting it together like this, you just make it so easy. You just click a button and you get your changes deployed. So far, with this last month, we've put together a website. And this website allows people to register accounts and reset their passwords to blah, blah, blah. But it, more importantly, gives an API that will allow our continuous integration server to deploy our changes, and it'll also allow our launcher, once we write our launcher, to be able to pull those changes and apply them to the client's computer. This website is very important to the project, actually, and we'll be coming back to it later down the road when we put together our dashboard for the performance and health of our game. So the website's very important. We got a lot of stuff already put into place. We're pretty much done with the website by now. And what we're working on now is putting together the continuous integration system, where we'll be putting together, configuring some software that will allow us to publish our changes immediately, and then write a launcher that'll allow those changes to be applied. So yeah, so that's what we're working on right now, is finalizing the auto updater. After that, we're going to be taking a look at getting our Unity and server projects kind of not stubbed out per se, but at least code written for them that allows ease of use for networking. We'll be talking about our networking framework. I've put together in R&D, I put together a networking framework that I'm quite happy with, and we're going to be putting that together, and it will be very applicable for a variety of different situations. And we'll talk more about that obviously in the future, but that's going to be the next thing that we're going to be working on. After that, we want to get the networking framework built up as much as possible in order to start working on our level editor. We're going to be actually abusing Unity pretty hardcore here by extending the editor to allow us to do things like modify our terrain and add quests and NPCs and behaviors and all that fun stuff. So after we get the networking thing together, the framework together, we're going to be working on a level editor that will allow us to edit our massive world, and most importantly, be able to test that massive world and test those changes as they happen. Again, this is going to be a running theme of a lot of the stuff we're going to do. We really want a short feedback loop. In that vein, the way the editor is going to be written is that you're going to be able to make some changes, either that be add a quest or move some terrain around. I don't know to what extent the functionality is going to be by the time we get here, but what I want is the ability for you inside of your Unity project that constitutes the editor to be able to hit play and be in that game to be able to test it. working with the creation kit, I've noticed a very long feedback cycle where you have to make some change, save your plugin file, load up Skyrim, COC to your cell, and then test the game. I don't want it to be like that. I want to use Unity to its full potential by being able to just hit play and be in your game. And I also want to be able to have a split screen um, gameplay to where a single person working on a level or modifying a quest or something can log in, hit a button, and then basically have another player logged into that same server as a split screen of him. I've done a lot of networking development for this project over the last couple of years, and one of the most annoying things that I've come across is when testing multiplayer games to have to launch a standalone build, log in through that, and just takes a year and a half. So we're going to be taking a look at all the possible ways to decrease the feedback loop in order to give us the best content creation workflow as possible. So yeah, those are our two big things that we're going to be working on after the auto updater. So let's talk about what we've done in the R&D so far. So like I said earlier, the R&D is actually quite a ways ahead of what we have recorded. Some of the big things that we have done in the R&D framework is one of the biggest things is pathfinding. I really wanted to be able to write a system that would allow the agents or the NPCs on the server to be able to move around the world in an intelligent way. In fact, this was a requirement for one of the games that I wrote as a bit of R&D. That we had little NPC guys who ran around and attacked things. So we needed some way for them to be able to understand the level. And what I did is I looked at some very popular frameworks for doing this, such as Recast and its companion framework Detour, dissected them and wrote implementations in C#. That's because obviously we're going to be using C# for the majority of our development. I haven't quite yet decided if I want to introduce some native C++ code on the server. That'll be a decision that we will have to make later. But what I did is I brought the concept of creating a nav mesh, like creating a mesh, the polygons that represent the walkable areas of your level, then importing them on the server so that agents can walk around. And that, again, is just an example of another thing that is applicable to every level of development. And even if you never plan on creating your own nav mesh generation or nav mesh query, the algorithms that we get to look at while doing that is applicable to most everything. It's a very complex piece of software, and it was very fun to write. And again, the whole point of this is to run into challenges and dissect them, and then explore them on video and show you guys how to build something like a pathfinding framework or a networking framework or something like that. Again, we really want to push for general knowledge here so that we give value to as many people as possible, despite the fact that we are working towards a actual product at the end, an actual game. A couple other things that we've done in R&D. I've put together a basic ability and stat engine. Support stat modifications for like buffs and debuffs. As far as the abilities, I created an ability system that allowed for a variety of different targeting systems, such as simple use, target point, target direction, target enemy, or target friendly, AoE from caster, AoE from point, and AoE from cone. So a variety of different ways that you can target or use targeting to invoke your ability. I also created a generalized effects system that allowed people to compose abilities very simply by saying, okay, well, I want to create an AoE from point, and I want the AoE radius to be 30 meters, and I want it to give 10 health to everybody it hits, something like that. And it allows me to put that together very easily. When we get to implementing this system in the actual game, though, what we're going to do is write up a very nice basic XML or JSON-based file format that'll allow us to create new abilities without even having to recompile our server. So I'm really excited just looking at that. Another thing that we've done is with the ability system is the skill shot. And the skill shot is a special type of targeting where you target a direction and then it instantiates a projectile that moves through the world. And whenever it hits something, it will apply whatever effect it has. Now, of course, all of this stuff, or most of this stuff, depends on a collision detection system. Now, I really don't want to have a physics engine on the server side. I evaluated looking at that possibility using a variety of different systems, and my conclusion was that they were too heavyweight for the kind of thing that we are trying to accomplish. However, physics systems typically come with useful components such as collision detection, and by not using a physics engine, it requires us to put together our own collision detection. So we will get to spend some time in the very near future actually looking at how does collision detection work? How do we effectively detect collisions between two objects, especially two objects of different shapes? So what I ended up with in this particular case was a very efficient spatial partitioning algorithm that allowed me to do things like return me all the players that are within a radius of this one point, and it does that query very efficiently, which is very important. Other things that we have already implemented, or I have implemented R&D, is the full auto updater, which we're almost done with doing on video as well. Another big thing is the interactive dashboard. So I really wanted a way to be able to monitor the health of the game by using a website that I can log into and see things like its performance characteristics, see who's in the world, and so on and so on. So I built this interactive dashboard. In the future, once we get to this on video, my tentative idea is to put together a Google Maps-like interface that allows a person like even a GM, not maybe just a developer or an administrator, but even like a GM, to be able to handle things from a web-based interface that will be driven by a very powerful client-side framework called Angular. So yeah, that's pretty much that's a big chunk of what we've done in R&D so far already. What we're going to be doing in R&D in the future is putting together our serialization engine. I'm not too happy with all the different serialization options available in .NET already. And what I mean by serialization is the ability for the server or the client to package data up and send it to each other. A lot of the formats, typically there's a trade-off between efficiency of the format, both in speed and in size of data, and ease of use. And I came up with a solution that I started playing with earlier that allows us to get both of those things without too much work. So we're going to be taking a look at how we're going to put together our serialization engine so that we get efficient data transmission. Then we're next up after that, or not after that, but maybe in addition to, we're going to be looking at our asset creation pipeline, how do assets get placed into the world. It's very important. Of course, that comes with the concept of how Quest, NPCs, and other server data gets loaded. That's another big question that we're going to have to explore.
And there's something I want to throw in here, and I know you kind of hemmed and hawed about it, but you made the mistake of telling it to me, and as an artist and a level designer, it got me really excited. So now I'm going to put it out there on recording and then keep pushing you so that we can see if we can get it. But one of the things that beyond Lee's really cool terrain system that he developed, one of the things we talked about was doing a voxel-based system or some kind of combination thereof.
Yep. That is one thing that we are considering, actually. When we get back to the terrain system, which we will be at first using Unity's terrain system, just for ease of use. It's a height map-based terrain. Once you understand its quirks, you can work with it fairly easy with height map-based data. But height map-based really? Height map, blah, blah, blah. Height map-based terrains are not very effective. There's a lot of things you can't do with the height map-based terrain. And there's a lot of potential solutions to that problem. One of the things, I think this was used in Halo Wars, is I think they called it a height field based terrain. And a height field based terrain, instead of having the height map data be represented as individual pixels that represents one point on the terrain, um, you have a vector that represents a single point on terrain. So three components, and it's basically the normal of that bit of the terrain. It allows you to do things like overhangs. But there's an even more advanced system, or advanced technique called voxel-based terrains. And that allows you to carve tunnels and do overhangs and do cliffs and really do whatever you want with the terrain. And they're very, very interesting.
Well, it was something that we got into in our CryEngine series, and I mean, you can do a lot of stuff with static meshes, but when you can build that stuff so much more quickly in your terrain editor, I got all sorts of excited when you said voxel-based system to me, so.
Yeah, we'll definitely be taking a look at that. Though there are considerations. Performance is one, storage requirements is the other, because voxel-based terrains typically take up a lot of storage. Um, I'm probably going to be looking at some sort of hybrid between the two. Store height map or height data as a bitmap like you would normally do, and then on parts that are sculpted with voxel terrain, store that as voxel data. And then on the client side, always present the terrain as a voxel terrain, but read from either the height map based data or the voxel based data depending on where you are and what bit has been modified. So we're definitely going to be taking a look at that too, and that'll be a lot of fun. But so yeah, so that's another thing that's going to come up in R&D. We'll definitely also want to look in R&D, some future R&D about how we want to handle versioning of our assets, like things like versioning quests and all that fun stuff. Because if you have two artists who are both working on the same quest, how do you handle versioning conflicts between the two? And how do you do so using a custom file format, a custom binary-based file format? So we'll take a look at that as well. And the last big question that we're going to need to be able to research is the load balancing between multiple simulation nodes. So I'm going to be taking a look at how we can effectively scale this seamless world horizontally. And what I mean by horizontal scaling as opposed to vertical scaling is that we should be able to add more machines to our farm in order to increase the amount of players that can be active in the game, as opposed to just being or as opposed to our only option being buying a better single server. So we definitely need to look at how we can horizontally scale our game to increase its scalability significantly for something, especially for something like an MMO. Okay, the next thing we got to talk about is the token system. So people who were in this class since its start should know a little bit about the token system, but for you guys who are new, let's talk about it again. The token system is where every person who is a part of this class or wants to participate in this class will get a token for every month of member sponsorship that they are active for. If they purchase, for example, a 6-month member sponsorship, they'll get 6 tokens. If they purchase a monthly member sponsorship, they'll get 1 token per month. The way that we organize this class is into chapters. Each token gives you access to 1 chapter. So for example, if you're just coming in, you'll have 1 token and have access to a single chapter. I want to point out that the existing content, all the stuff that I've talked about previously in this video, will be available to everybody who subscribes, regardless of how many tokens they have. I also want to say that people who have been member sponsors since the beginning of this project, your token count will be respected, and you will likely not have to worry about it because of the token accumulation. So basically we want to make this as fair as we can for everybody who's been in this class since the beginning. We definitely appreciate it, and so you guys will be pretty much fine. For people who come in who are new to this, we organize the content on a monthly basis, and so by giving people access to 1 month at a time, it makes sense. So the token system will be started next month. Like I said, all the existing content, including the content that was released this month, will be exempt from the token system. And everybody who is an active member sponsor once the token system starts next month will be automatically given one token, and in addition to whatever tokens they may have previously. That brings us into our content schedule. Currently, what we're shooting for is 3 drops per week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of new content. Now, this originally was, or this still really is, something that we do when we have time to do it. But we've been recently, over the last 6 months, been putting such a massive investment into this project that we have a decent amount of stuff already R&D'd out. And we've talked about that earlier in this video, or this introduction. So as of now, we're going to be pushing content out every week, 3 days a week. And so you guys can just keep an eye on that. Next up, we will be scheduling open office hours if there is enough demand. So an open office hours session is when people are free, or any member sponsor is free to hop in on a webinar, and you'll have access to me or Steve on request, I suppose. I don't see, unless Steve hates the idea of open office hours.
I don't mind at all, but if you're looking for programming, I'm definitely not the person to ask. But absolutely, on asset creation or anything like that, I would be more than happy to show up and answer questions.
Yep, and so we just want to provide some time for you guys to be able to hang out, ask questions, start discussions about what we might be working on, and so on. They may or may not be recorded based on if there's anything that I feel is useful for all of the students in the class. So it'll be an hour or two, and it'll be weekly if there is demand. Again, this is just another example of something that you really can't get elsewhere. This is we really want this to be unique. We want it to distinguish ourselves from a variety of other, similar people out there, and we want to provide something that you can't find anywhere else. So
yeah, I mean, even if you look at training somewhere else, you may be able to email somebody a question, but maybe you'll get an answer, maybe you won't, maybe they'll never see the email. And we're willing to show up live and start a dialogue rather than just, here's an answer to your question, and I hope it was helpful. We'll be there to go back and forth and make sure you really understand what's going on.
Exactly. And it's also important that we consider everybody who's a part of this class to be a part of this class. This is, despite what we've talked, or other than what we've talked about in this video about our plans, we're really just going to this system by system. We're really just saying, okay, so now we're going to be focusing on building an auto updater. Now we're going to be focusing on building a network framework and all that stuff. And you guys are more than welcome to talk about what we're putting together. In fact, it's encouraged that you do, and maybe offer alternatives or whatever. And just start a dialogue, and we can put together something unique.
Well, by example, even in the art class, one of our artists also programs, and in and of his own volition, he went out and created a day-night system for the game.
Yeah.
And, that's really cool, and that's something that I would love to sit down and really look at what he did and see if there's something we can do to make it more efficient or to make it better coded so that, he can advance his skills and everybody else can see what's going on. It's a little bit more of a round table than a real class would normally be. And that's really exciting. That's a lot of fun. That's where great ideas come from.
Yep. And of course, by engaging with the content, it just makes it that much more impactful. I think this just about wraps up this video. Again, just to recap, we're putting this project together just to provide us with a framework of a lot of challenges that we're going to be needing to overcome. A lot of them have been overcome. We have over 100 hours of recorded content already available right now that will be, for now, or will be, exempt from the token system, that anybody can jump in and learn about. Everything from terrain to building your own parser to building an entire network-based game in Unity and Photon. I mean, a lot of great stuff already there, a lot of great stuff coming up, and a lot of great stuff that's already actually been researched by me, but I just have simply not been able to put into video quite yet, but is definitely on the list of things to do once we finish the auto updater and our networking framework, and our basic level editor. So a lot of great stuff is coming up, a lot of great stuff is available, a very unique opportunity for anybody who is interested in something like
You
this.
really can't emphasize enough that there's so much live content already that I mean, if you actually went to a brick and mortar school for programming, you'd be hard pressed during the course of a degree to get this many hours of actual live examples.
Hmm.
And we've only begun to scratch the surface. We have so much more stuff coming. This is an entire education. It's just, it is. And if you jump in, even if you're not an artist, and you jump in on the art side on Wednesday nights, you're getting two educations.
Yep. And again, that's just why this is such a, a great project, or at least an MMO is a great idea. It's simply because it provides us, it gives us enough questions to explore that covers every aspect of development or game development or even web development that you may wish to explore.
I have every expectation by the time we reach the end, you'll have actually taught me to program just by osmosis.
I'm going to hold you to that. All right, so I think that just about wraps this introduction up. I guess that, yeah, thanks for watching, and hope to
Yeah,
see you guys
this will be
around.
fun.